One morning, two warlocks arrived in Rotterdam. The guys came from Schiedam, which is a town next to Rotterdam. Rotterdam and Schiedam are two cities in the Netherlands. Schiedam is a town at the northwest of Rotterdam, in the harbor district. So these two warlocks were from Suriname. They were in the late 20s, and they arrived at the home of this Cape Verdean guy. This guy was from Cabo Verde, and this guy was only 20. And he was far more experienced in being a warlock than those two guys from Suriname. That guy, which was 20, he attended a university somewhere. He almost finished his bachelor's degree, was about to start his master's degree. So to the outside world, he appeared to be just a common student, a common foreign student that grew up in the Netherlands, but that was not the case. No, this warlock received the two men in his house. Well, actually, his studio apartment, but okay. And he asked the two men, "What can I do for you?" And the two Surinamese told him, "Well, sir," they called him sir, even though they were older than him, because they acknowledged this guy is superior in what they're doing. They told him, "Sir, we have faced a lot of bad luck during our lifetime. And when it comes to the opposite sex of females, often the females we get around us only do us dirty. I've been into 4 relationships, all lasted very short, and every time they treated me badly." And the other guy also confessed that he had 6 relationships and they all went very ugly. And they also told how they were often rejected on job interviews. And so those guys really wanted help, because they told the 20-year-old warlock, "We don't want to get into drugs because there are many people that go through similar things like us and go into drugs just to make it. We don't want to do that because there will be danger over there." So after hearing out both men, the 20-year-old warlock said, "Oh, I get it. You guys want bad tensions to be removed from you." The two guys said, "Yeah, man, yeah." The guys even confessed, "We know about this thing, doing voodoo, windy, hinting, all those stuff, but we never really bothered with it. But when we realized things were really going off in our lives, we thought, you know what, let's begin to use those natural religions to get somewhere." The 20-year-old warlock realized that the men were realistic, that the men were seriously wanting to go for it. Then one of the guys told the warlock, "I want you to do a love spell for me. Or I want you to teach me how to do a love spell." The other guy said, "Yes, me too. And I also want you, for both of us, to teach us how to do a money spell. So we'll get out of financial difficulties and we can really begin to live." Then the warlock said, hold up. Not so fast. Trust me, I'm far more experienced than you two, even though one of you is 28, the other is 29, is about to become 30 tomorrow. Trust me, you don't need a love spell and you don't need a money spell. I'm telling you, stay away from those two things. Instead, we're going to do the following." The warlock went into his wardrobe and he came with some pots and handed it over to them. "You don't have to pay me for this. I'm going to give you an instruction manual. Do this." They left the house of the warlock. They both went home. When they arrived at home, they were WhatsApping one another and they were talking about it, and they thought, is this guy out of his mind? We're asking for a love spell and for a money spell because those are the 2 regions in our lives that we have most trouble with, the opposite sex and to find finances. And what does he do? He gives us a manual how to enforce financial misfortune on our enemies. And the two guys were really upset. They thought, come on now. I thought this warlock was really something. The guys felt disappointed, but one of them told the other, you know what? That guy is far more experienced than us. Let's listen to what he's saying. We went all the way there, and he made effort. He even gave us potions for free. So he trusts us. So the two guys decided to practice what's on the manual. Every morning they woke up early. They chanted their meditations. They chanted the spells. They lit the candles. They boiled the potion. They did all that they had to do. After 2 weeks, both men witnessed how almost everyone around them, both relatives, former friends, and even former classmates, they heard reports from people. I'm saying they heard reports about people they haven't spoken to in years, some even not in decades. And those people, they all went through a lot of financial difficulty. One lost his job out of the blue. The other, his car broke down, and now he had a lot of expenses over there. Someone else was kicked out of his apartment because he paid the rent, but suddenly the rent disappeared on the bank account of the landlord. Then there was this chick who was living together with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend lost cash and began to beat the woman, so he ended up in jail. So those two Surinamese guys began to hear a lot of reports. They were overwhelmed with reports of a lot of people going through a lot of hardship. And the point is, they didn't even ask for those reports. It is as if automatically they reported about all the bad stuff that were going on financially in lives of those other people. And after, when it entered into a month after they began doing their paranormal thing, they even heard that one of the guys that they used to work with at a supermarket 5 years ago, that guy robbed a store and he almost killed 2 people. He didn't rob the store because he needed money. He robbed the store out of anger because his girlfriend just broke out and took away all his money. So he just wanted to take it out. So those guys were surprised. And here's the thing. There were employers that refused to give them jobs. They lost staff. Staff just walked out, went away from them. So a lot of stuff were happening. And then those two guys realized, hold on a minute, this is really working. The two Surinamese warlocks became frightened. Because first of all, they had no intention of forcing any bad luck on anyone. They were not into doing evil. They didn't want anything to do with evil. They just wanted bad things to be removed from them. So those two young warlocks couldn't understand why that younger warlock, who was really like an elder to them, why he told them to enforce financial misfortune on their enemies. The guys didn't even consider that they had any enemies. They were quite naive. But within the second month, while they were still doing the paranormal thing, they even went to some pagan store to buy more of that potion. The first pots they received from the warlock free. Then the next one they pay for it themselves. In the second month, one guy received a letter from the taxation service saying that he had to receive 2,000 euros back because he paid too much tax. He thought, okay, he took the money. He decorated his apartment. Then that one guy got a job somewhere. It was a part-time job, but it earned like 1,800 euros a month, as if he was working full-time. So the guy was happy. Then in the third month, one hot chick, as they call it in the streets, after the other, began to get near those two men. They were overwhelmed by the amount lot of attractive women that suddenly noticed them. They were really overwhelmed. They didn't know what to do. So in the 4th month, when both of them were at the Rotterdam Central Station, eating some fries at Burger King, this 20-year-old warlock, who was about to turn 21, just passed by. And he had this 24-year-old girlfriend with him, who was a lawyer. And the 20-year-old warlock, told his 20-year-old girlfriend, wait over there for me. She did. And he walked onto those 2 men. The 2 men recognized him and said, hey, it's you. And the 20-year-old warlock asked them, well, how are you? And the 2 men reported onto him all that happened, how overwhelmed they were. And the 20-year-old warlock told them, didn't I tell you to stay away from love spells and money spells? Didn't I tell you that you don't need any of those? Then the 2 men asked them, sir, why did you instruct us to enforce financial misfortune on our enemies? Then the 20-year-old warlock was really their superior, told them, listen, the moment you guys entered my house, I knew you guys were serious. I knew you guys were not joking around. You guys really wanted help. And I really appreciate sincere and honest people. But I also realized that you guys had lack of understanding, had lack of knowledge, and realized you guys were quite naive in many aspects. I knew that to inform you with all stuff would overwhelm me. So I realized, you know what? You guys suffer psychic attacks. You guys suffered psychic violence, and it's that psychic violence, that flow of negative energy towards you, by people that energize negativity towards you, because they don't like you, they have a will against you. That was what caused all the dysfunctions in your lives. And where many people over the years have been agree bad upon you. So I realized for you guys to deal with those things individually, it will exhaust you. So I realized what would be effective. When your enemies, the warlock explained onto them, when they face costs and they have to lose what they don't want to lose, when things really begin to cost them, and the costs are painful, they realize, okay, we need to stop, we need to adapt, whether they want to or not. And the easiest way to get your antagonists to back off or to turn away from their negative agreements is by them having to face financial losses. So I instruct you to enforce financial misfortune, and what happens? All those other people, all the people that had any negative agreement against you guys, they all suffered a lot of financial misfortune. And the financial misfortune led to other bad stuff in their lives. Like some of you told me, one guy ended up in jail because he beat up his girlfriend when he lost money. One was kicked out of his apartment and lost all the stuff he had. Others, man, their business that they had suffered loss because staff just walked away, stopped coming to work anymore. The staff just didn't come to work anymore. So when all of this happened, those people sensed that somewhere it had to do with you guys. They didn't know what it really was, but they realized we need to change how we think and how we feel about those 2 men, because or else things going to become bad for us. And here's the thing, there were those people that went to fortune tellers, and fortune tellers informs them that you 2 guys enforced judgment on those that contributed to harm to you. And there were people in the government in Rotterdam that wanted to know why so many people out of the blue had financial difficulties. There were even bankers in Rotterdam that realized this doesn't add up. How come our systems are failing like this? How come so much dysfunction in our banking systems? First, they thought they were hackers. They were hacking the bank system, but then they realized they're not hackers. So the bankers, together with the local politicians of the municipality of Rotterdam, they went to a wizard, and the wizard told him everything concerning you 2 guys. So that's why the the people of the taxation service decided to be generous with you and grant you 2,000 euros out of the blue. That's why suddenly out of the blue, you got a job. And that's why, out of the blue, when all the bad tensions were removed from you, you guys were relieved. Now there was place for happy things to happen. And as men, you guys were confident, and this confidence attracted women. Now before, you were also confident, but you had all these tensions around you that weighed you down. Now those tensions are gone. Now you're operating more freely. So when the warlock explained everything to them, the guys were shocked. And the guys learned a lot. Now, am I telling you now, by the way, that was a parable, am I telling you now to become a warlock? Am I telling you now to enforce financial misfortune on people paranormally? No. In this parable, you had two men who decided, let's take the paranormal route because we need help. They were serious. But those men acknowledged that they lacked understanding, that they lacked experience. So they went for someone who was famous for being successful, for having experience. They referred onto the guy. And when they came, the 20-year-old warlock, who was the experienced one, he helped them out. He helped them out far better than they could have imagined. Because those two men were only focused on the circumstances and how the circumstances could be fixed. The warlock looked at the bigger picture. The other warlock, the 20-year-old one, looked at the bigger picture. And he realized that this is not the fault of these two young men. These men are just victims of psychic violence. And the 20-year-old warlock realized the only way this is ever going to stop is if all those people who've invested against those guys are dealt with. Because the warlock even saw in the spirit that those two young men, that they would die before age 40, due to all the psychic violence upon them. One would die due to sickness, the other would die due to violence. But the warlock didn't inform them about that. The warlock just helped them out. Now the warlock, 20-year-old warlock now, did not intend to harm the two men, absolutely not. He really wanted to help them. But that warlock, that 20-year-old one, was deceived himself because he's in the paranormal. And what did I tell you before about the paranormal? There are always side effects. Now those two Surinamese men, let's continue the parable. Man, they got with a lot of women in a very short time. But it also led to several of them being impregnated. So now they had multiple women pregnant by them. Now over time, and those guys reached 40, and then they became 44, 45. They had many kids, and they had their house. So everything was at ease. But the people they enforced financial misfortune upon, they didn't forget about those guys. So now the children of those people now are after them. And because they can't fight them, they're after the kids. So now the kids they've got with those women, let's say those guys now have, let me say they have 20 kids now. Let's exaggerate for a moment. Now those 20 kids who have nothing to do with the violence that their fathers endured in their young years, those 20 kids now are the target of the rage of those people that were dealt with by the paranormal judgment that those two young men enforced on their enemies. So what really happened was that those two young men, they got relief. And that relief worked out. They got jobs, they got the money, they got the women, they even got children, they even purchased their own houses, they went on expensive holidays. So things really worked out for them, but it was just relief. They were not delivered. They were still quite naive in many aspects. So those kids that they begot, when they reached their teenage years, there were predators after them. Sex predators, out of the blue coming after them. Where did those sex predators come from? Those were some of the people in the past that were dealt with, and some of them were affected by the financial misfortune that those two warlocks enforced on their enemies paranormally. So a generational cycle of violence was now initiated. There was violence against those young men. They were the scapegoats. But now the violence has been transferred, not destroyed. The violence had been halted for about 15 years. For 15 years the violence was halted, but now, because the paranormal cover that they were operating in expired, now the violence returned, and the violence was far bigger now. And now it was affecting their children. So now there were young girls now, young teenage girls having predators coming after them. And the reason predators were after them because they wanted to act outrage against them because they were the daughters of those two men. You see where this is going? Look, I gave you this parable to teach you that in a paranormal there are always side effects. But I want to teach you something else also. Those two Surinamese warlocks that were inexperienced, they were humble enough to receive teaching from someone who was more experienced. Even though the one that was more experienced was far younger than them, they were willing to listen. So their humility benefited them. But even though the benefits were short-lived because it was a paranormal. Now, it surprises me how many people claim to follow Christ, but when you teach them sound doctrine in agreement with Christ, they go off. They're proud. They don't want to listen. They fall back on church doctrine, on their own experience, how they think, how they feel, instead of just shutting up and receive from the Holy Spirit. I mean, sound a bit harsh now, but I'm very shocked at how many people claim to follow Christ, yet they're not humble to receive from those who are anointed by Christ. People that have been haunted by psychic violence their whole lives, who endured danger on their lives, who even came near death due to psychic violence, they know very well that there's no playing around. They need to have serious security. Now, those two warlocks in this fictive parable I just gave unto you, they knew they needed help. They were just deceived in thinking that the paranormal was the way out. It would have been better if they were born again, became born again, agreed with Christ, and began to walk by faith. Because if they began to walk by faith, the troubles would have increased, but the violence would have been destroyed, and they would have been delivered. Now they were only relieved, and the haunting returned with interest. So that's why you have families where people have money, but there are all kinds of troubles haunting that family. Why? Because somewhere the grandfather, who was a warlock, used financial spells and all of that, and he became wealthy. And his children and their children, the third generation, renewed the pact. But the resistance and psychic violence against them also increases with every generation. So from the outside, they appear to be just a wealthy family, they're doing well, but behind the scenes, man, there's a lot of stuff going on. So don't let appearances fool you. Well, I hope you've learned from this parable. Again, I'm not telling you to go into the paranormal, absolutely not. I hope this parable I gave unto you even warns you and deters you from going to paranormal, from seeking paranormal aid. Just be humble to receive from Christ and endure. Endure in the faith. Be at peace.